We're getting pretty used to our little trips to India in these videos. And this game has very deep roots that go way back in history and have links to games and other cultures as well. It's called Tablan. Back in February of 2023, I recorded this video on an Egyptian game called Tab. Some of my longtime fans will remember our whole series of ancient Egyptian games, part of the Peg Pastimes collection that you can get on our website. While researching this game called Tab, I found some references to similar games all around the world in different cultures. This series of games, this type of game, is called a running fight game, and many resources referred to this game called Tablan. The discovery of games like this instantly get the researchers excited about trying to find connections between these games around the world. And here we have some very strong possibilities. Evidence suggests the existence of trade between the Egyptian pharaoh Sahur in the year 2750 BC with a land that he referred to in the Far East called the Land of Punt. By some linguistic trickery, the historians found out that he was probably referring to India. And the ancient trade routes between Egypt and India were a combination of land and sea routes. A lot of different ways to get there from there and bring stuff back. And so these caravans going both directions would take with them spices, precious stones, textiles, works of art, and, I presume, games. During the Roman and Ptolemaic periods in Egypt, these trade routes were even more significant. Now, according to some sources, the game of Tablan originated in the province of Karnataka, in the southwestern side of India, in an area that was known as the Kingdom of Mysore. And being situated on the west coast, it was as direct a link as you could have to Egypt. So which came first, Tab or Tablan? The earliest known reference to Tab is in a poem by the medieval Arabic Mamluk poet from Egypt named Ibn Daniel. He lived from 1248 to 1310 in the current era. So that kind of indicates that it was played in the Middle East during that period. But the roots for Tablan are pretty much unknown, except that it's probably 1,000 years old. So maybe the same time period. They have a few of the same movement patterns and piece powers, but aside from that, they are played quite differently. Let's have a look at how to play Tablan. Tablan is played by two players on a board of 4 rows of 12 squares. 4 stick dice, or casting sticks, or cowrie shells, or tamarind seeds, or coins, are used to determine the movement of the pegs. Each player begins the game with 12 pegs of their color set up as shown. This row of spaces is called their home row. Players throw the casting sticks alternately, counting the plain sides showing. The first player to throw a 1 starts the game. I actually did a video on how stick dice work, if you'd like to refer to that. The movement that results from tossing the dice are compared to this chart. If the stick dice land with 1 flat side up and the other 3 flat sides down, that indicates a move of 2 spaces, or 2 pegs, 1 space each. If 2 or 3 flat sides are showing, there's nothing going to happen. There's no moving, and the player's turn is over. If 4 flat sides are showing, then you move a peg 8 spaces, or 2 pegs, 4 spaces each. If no flat sides are up, move a peg 12 spaces, or 2 pegs, 6 spaces each. Throwing a nothing, the roll of 2 or 3, the player's turn ends. But on any other result, the player can throw the stick dice again and keep going. A throw of the dice must be used in full, unless there's no way of doing so. This means their turn is over and nothing happens and the sticks are passed. Now let's see how all this plays out on the game board. For each player, the course starts at the left end of their home row. Pegs move to the right, then onto the second row where they go left to the end, and then onto the third row where they go to the right, and at that end, then they finally end up in the opponent's home row. Now the player who threw a 1 at the start of the game makes their first move according to this row. 1 peg 2 spaces or 2 pegs 1 space. After that, all the moves are according to that chart I showed you a few seconds ago. Pegs can move over other pegs, friendly or enemy pegs, to complete a move. But if a peg lands on an enemy peg, the enemy peg is captured and removed from the game. But a player cannot capture an enemy peg on their own home row. Now here's the interesting twist about that opponent's home row. Once you move one of your pegs into that far row, it is immobilized. It can never move again and cannot be captured. The game keeps on going until one of the players have moved all their remaining pieces into the last row of the board. The winner of the game is the player who has the most pegs in the enemy's home row. Captain's Log Supplemental. I've seen a rule that says a die result of 1, which is really a result of 2, can be split into 2 separate moves for the same peg. Now what that means is that a peg can potentially make 2 captures in one move. This does not apply if the first capture would occur in the opponent's home row, of course. Also, I've seen a rule that says these home row captures have to be done in order across the row, from the first space to the last. That's going to make the game last really a long time, while the pegs hang around for just the right die results. But it can be done. And there's one more vague situation. I found a rule that a peg must capture to enter the opposing home row. That also would add to the game's length. I recommend not following that rule. But that's the nature of ancient games. House rules prevail. Speaking of which, I have to tell you that there are a lot of different regional rules. Are you surprised? Some of these, like Pagada or Tabla, use what's called diacati dice. These are diacati dice. They're brass long dice, and they're numbered 1, 2, 3, and blank. And of course, these dice will have completely different odds as compared to tossing binary dice like stick dice. And in addition to that difference, there's no splitting of the die rolls amongst 2 pieces. But the 00, if that comes up on the dice, allows you to move a piece 12 spaces. The only way that you get a second throw is if you capture an enemy piece during your turn. Then you get another turn as a bonus. That's actually an easier game than the Tablan rules that you just saw, but the rules about entering the home row are still the same. Once your piece enters there, you can't move it anymore. And you want to get as many pieces in there as you can, and so you want to get them to move along that row as far as possible, because once they're there, they're stuck. Now, apparently the very first mention of Tablan in the English-speaking world was by R.C. Bell in his famous book of Games of Many Civilizations. It's really surprising to me that this game will have been around for several centuries before we heard of it in the West, especially based on the fact that there's so many Indian games that have become so popular. Why not Tablan? Today you can find Tablan and its variants all over the internet. I'm sure the growing board game industry in India will begin to churn out some commercial versions of the game. I haven't been able to find any, although there are a lot of artisan-style copies of Tablan available, places like Etsy and so on. Well, meanwhile, we here at NewVenture Games are doing our best to bring Tablan back to the consciousness of the Western world, and in our Kickstarter campaign, we will be offering this as one of the many rewards in that campaign. So jump on over to Kickstarter, place your pledge, and then you can play Tablan all the time. And be sure to play every day. So it looks like Egyptian Tab wins the contest of longevity, at least as far as the literary references are concerned. There is always a slim chance that the two games developed independently. That does happen, especially when you look at running fight games like this that developed in Scandinavia and in Mesoamerica. The case for a trade route connection in those situations is pretty tenuous. Trade between the Vikings and India, trade between the Hindus and the Inca, and what about the Chinese and the natives of British Columbia? Everybody should be playing this game.